Before we begin, I'd like to speak the University of Ottawa's Indigenous affirmation. We pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their longstanding relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. We acknowledge the traditional knowledge keepers, both young and old, and we honor their courageous leaders, past, present, and future. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to introduce the EMCoP, the Emerging Media Community of Practice, who, for those who may not be familiar. So this isn't to be confused with La Communauté de Pratique des Médias Émergents d'Ottawa. uOttawa has an emerging media community of practice renamed from the VR/AR community of practice only just recently. But the EMCoP started with the University of British Columbia as the VR/AR user group in 2016. It developed into an independent consortium of faculty, staff, students, and industry professionals who share an interest in emerging media and technology across the country, and has settled on its current name, the Emerging Media Community of Practice, the EMCoP, in April 2021. EMCoP monthly meetings allow the community to get together on a regular basis to discuss and learn about innovations in immersive media and other emerging technologies. The official website is emcop.ca. I'll just add that to the chat. The main purposes of the EMCoP are to provide a forward-looking forum in which we share current projects and bring expertise to forecasting and shaping the future of this area, provide a stimulating environment in which we solve concrete challenges in and around immersive technology in relation to education and research, and provide a strong network that brings opportunities to collaborate across different communities that care about the role of emerging media, such as virtual augmented reality in education and research. The EMCoP's August meeting will be announced shortly on the website, so stay tuned. And with those preliminaries out of the way, we'll get to today's session, which is about solving problems with emerging media. We have 3 presentations. Each presentation will last about 20 minutes. After which there will be time for discussion and questions and answers. So if you have questions, you can put them in the chat and presenters can address them as they have time. Or if you'd prefer to keep questions and discussion to the very end, we can do that as well. So with that, I'll see if I can introduce my first speaker. So to present on using virtual reality to treat mental disorders, we have Stéphane Bouchard. So Stéphane Bouchard holds the Canada Research Chair in Clinical Cyberpsychology. He's full professor at the Université du Québec en Outaouais and adjunct professor at the University of Ottawa. He's been doing research on clinical applications of virtual reality since 1999. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Stéphane.
Thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so I'm going to kick off the presentations with something a presentation related to mental disorders. So it's how we can use virtual reality or VR to treat several mental disorders. And in terms of declaration of interest, I just want to highlight that I'm also the president of a spin-off company in virtual. Initially at the university, when I started developing the first virtual environments in the lab, we would put them for free on the lab's website. But then people will rightfully complain that there were no follow-ups and no updates or nothing. So with the university, we started this company where the virtual environments we developed for research are now available to Canadians and people across the world if they want to purchase that. And the profits essentially goes back to the university. But to be totally clear on that, and I think or feel, or I'd even say I'm certain you need some context to understand what I'm going to present, because you're going to think we're totally crazy as psychologists if we cannot provide some context on why we use virtual reality. And I'll start with anxiety disorders, because this is the field where there's most randomized controlled trials documenting the efficacy and effectiveness of using VR. And in a nutshell, I'm going to oversimplify what anxiety disorders are. But when you're anxious, the brain, or I'm going to point with my own picture because I can't point with my finger because it's always the wrong side. So I'm going to try to point this one. That's going to get funny over time. So if you look at the brain, there's a part of the brain in the middle that it's called the limbic system, or it's the part of the brain that deals with emotions. And that very specific part of the brain, usually when there's a trigger, when there's a threat, when there's an explosion, when you see someone laughing at you or coming with a gun, or you cross a bear or whatever, it takes about 5 to 10 milliseconds before that part of the brain perceives it as threatening. Once you perceive a threat, which is quite rapid, that's going to trigger emotions. So we don't think, we emote first, and then we make sense of it. And that'll come really critical on why virtual reality could work for mental disorders. But at the same time, say that I'm shy giving talks. Well, if I don't like to give presentation and talks, and then I end up in front of a group, that's going to trigger my perception of threat. I'm going to get anxious. And a logical solution would actually be to run away. So if I go out of the talk, well, that fixes the problem because my anxiety stops. But that's a trap, and that's a trap that we call avoidance. Because if I avoid what I'm afraid of, my limbic system, the part of the brain that deals with emotion, will not have the occasions and the chances or the opportunities to learn by experience that there's no threat. So if every time there's a problem, I never face it, it solves the problem, but it doesn't really solve the problem because problem A is still there, and B, I don't get the feeling that I can cope with that. So that being said, it means that when it's time to do the treatment, well, what we call evidence-based treatment, or treatments for which we have proofs, the key ingredient that you have here, I feel like Mickey Mouse, but the key ingredient that you have here is called exposure. And I'm going to provide some context, but essentially what we do in psychotherapy, or in effective psychotherapy, is we help people confront what they're afraid of. So progressively they face their fears, and the limbic system, the part of the brain that deals with emotion, learns by experience that there's no danger. And that fits within a whole treatment that is called cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. You might have heard about CBT. And essentially, there's lots of ingredients in the toolbox of CBT. The key ingredient is essentially exposure. So we need to prepare exposure, and then we need to go through exposure. So that needs to be clarified, because when we do exposure, that's myself, for example, doing exposure for feeder spiders. So you see there's a spider there, and I'm actually holding a spider, a tarantula, in the lab. So it means that if I have a patient who's afraid of spiders, well, I need to have probably a spider somewhere. And then the patient needs to progressively confront what they're afraid of. Spiders are easy. You can grab a few ones on the line. But if you're afraid of flying, for example, or for fear of flying, it means that the patient has to take the plane, which will cost the patient, plus myself as a therapist. And as a therapist, I do not control what's going to happen in the plane. So if we have a rough flight, I'm not helping my patient. I would rather prefer to have a slow flight and then take off only when we're ready, and so on. So essentially, when we do exposure, the goal of exposure is to help patients learn, or help the limbic system learn by experience, that there's no threat. It means that if you're very shy and you're afraid of giving talks, you need to practice giving talks. It's worse than that, because people who are afraid of giving talks are not afraid of other people looking at them. They're afraid of making mistakes. So it means that in psychotherapy, to go over your fear of public speaking, you need to make mistakes in public. And that's quite challenging for people because they don't want to make mistakes. And then comes virtual reality, where you see myself here with a patient. That's myself talking to a patient. The patient here is wearing their virtual reality goggles, and she sees herself in the airplane through the goggles, but I see her, and I see on the monitor what's going there. So I can help her cope with her fear of flying, and we're going to take off only when we're ready. And then if she's really tolerating this well, then we can get turbulences, and then we get really strong turbulences, and then we can land with turbulences. And if she's afraid of landing, we can land 25 times in an hour, which is something impossible to do. So we can go further than what we could do in real life. But you need that previous information, because otherwise you're going to think that we're crazy because we're making people feeling discomfort. But it's actually to learn through experience that there's no threat. So does it work? There's tons of studies that it works. I'm going to take only a few and I'm going to take one that has been done here in Gatineau, across the river from Ottawa. And this is an example of a study with social anxiety disorder. So in a nutshell, the first studies that were done for anxiety disorders were with phobias, spiders, fear of flying. Studies have shown that it is as effective as standard treatment. So it works as well. So you saw me holding a tarantula or a spider before, where that's what we do pre-treatment. We offer patients to hold the tarantula, or at least have the tarantula in a jar and tickle the tarantula with a pen. And if they don't want to do that, well, they're still phobic. If they can do that, they're definitely not phobic anymore. So we can measure that for flying and so on. So scientifically, it's quite interesting. Clinically, it's quite boring because that's not where the real need is. The real need is for more complex anxiety disorders, such as social anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder, and so on. So in that study, we use a questionnaire, it doesn't matter which one, but you see a green line across. The green line is a cutoff score. And the cutoff score is, below that is the normal non-clinical population. Above that is the clinical population. We randomized adults suffering from social anxiety disorders to 3 groups. There's a black group, there's a blue group, and there's a red group. So I'm going to talk to you about the red group, which wasn't published. So I think it's interesting. I'm giving you a scoop here. But before that, what we've shown in that study is what if we do cognitive therapy with real exposure, it means that people are going to those places and facing their fears. It means that in my lab, I need to gather a group. So you talk about stupid things in front of the group, and the group is watching you making mistakes, so you're facing it. It works. And it's a CBT with in vivo, the black line. It works well. Gains are maintaining their follow-up. If you do the whole thing, but in VR, people put the goggles, you could find yourself, for example, in a restaurant or in a classroom or having a job interview. And in all those situations, you're facing your fears in virtual reality. And it works as well. And it's significantly non-inferior to doing this in real life or in vivo, and gains are maintained follow-up. So it works well, works as well. We also combined, and that was not mentioned in the article. In the article, we just reported the waiting lists, and both treatments were superior to the waiting list. But then after the waiting list, when people have waited for therapy, you just don't send them back home, you treat them. And we decided to treat them flexibly, as psychotherapists would do, with a mix and match, or a little bit of VR, a little bit of in vivo. And you see that it worked. And it didn't work well, it did it less, just the same. So if you use VR, you don't have to gather a crowd. You don't have to go and talk in front of a crowd with something on your head so you look silly and you're facing your fears like that. You just do that in VR. Some of you might wonder, well, why is it working? Because it's VR. We'll come to that in a minute. And overall, if we look at the studies that have compared using virtual reality with a waiting list, you see essentially that when it favors the treatment and when it favors the waiting list, you know that when it's on that side, it means that it's not effective. And overall, in all the studies, you see that it is actually favoring the treatment. So it's more effective, and that's been repeated over several studies. So it's just not one study, and this is for complex anxiety disorders, not specific phobias. It's people who have complex issues. They're suffering from substance abuse and major depression as well as of that, and it works. Then if we compare with controls, how does it work when we compare with actual treatment? So is it better? I mean, if this is here where it is as effective, is it in favor of VR or in favor of the control treatment being the standard treatment? We see that essentially it lies in between, with very few studies saying that it's better in VR, but no studies that is showing that it's worse in VR. So essentially, we have treatments that are as effective repeatedly compared to other treatments that are standards of care. So it's not just one study, it's just not a sci-fi group somewhere in the lab in Gatineau doing things, and it's been repeated, and these studies are from across the world. I just have to do the other one if you don't mind. Okay, so if it is as effective, why bother? Well, this is why I wanted to present you the data that no one was presented in the article, is that if you look at the cost effectiveness. So what we measured here is how much trouble it was for psychotherapists in terms of cost to go to the social places. So I'm back to the social phobia study. And well, there's an amount of cost here. The specific value doesn't really matter, but it's the amount of cost that it requires to do the therapy when the treatment is standard. And then this is the amount of cost when we do the same thing in virtual reality. And when we do the same thing in virtual reality, it is as effective, but it is significantly less costly in terms of efforts for the psychotherapist, which is an advantage for the healthcare system. If you combine now, which wasn't published, but you have the scoop here, if you combine in the red group, you see that, whoa, if you hear that, you see that it is still very costly. So combining may not be worth it, but doing full facing your fear in virtual reality works, and it is more cost effective, which is pretty nice because now we can hopefully reduce the cost for the mental health system. But if we reduce the cost, could we improve the efficacy? Could we make the treatment more effective? And that's what we tried in another study that's going to be published soon. And that study is about fear of heights. So I go back to the limbic system because you need to really understand that I'm not crazy. If I do therapy with someone who's afraid of height, it means that we would go near to a cliff or we cross a bridge or whatever, and we look down and that person will realize, ooh, I'm afraid of falling. And then that person will realize that she's actually not falling. But the phobics are still afraid of being drawn by the cliff. So what we did in our study is we randomized the patients to going in that virtual height thing environment here, and half the group were allowed to jump. So you actually jump in the void and jump out of the cliff. And what happens is, and we're talking about phobics here, what happens is first they don't want to do that. Then when they're ready to do that, they cry, and then they laugh, and then they conclude something is that they jump or fall only when they are ready. They're not drawn by the cliff. Nothing crazy brings them to fall. It's just when they want to control. And so they want to be under control of the fact that they jump. So essentially what it means is they can learn something in virtual reality, or the limbic system could learn something in virtual reality that they could not do in vivo because they're going to die. So essentially we're pushing the message to the limbic system, the part of the brain that deals with emotion, to really confirm that there's no threat. And this is what you have here is the pre-post effect of just a virtual reality exposure. And you see that when pre or post in blue, well, it improved, but they improved more when they had to jump. And this is not measured by a questionnaire. This is measured by them actually going on the top of a fireman ladder. So there's a ladder in Gatineau where you could do that for cliff and climbing, and they're invited to actually go high here, and you see that's an actual patient being climbing up. So it's just not just that they feel better; they're doing it differently and not much worse, but they're going much further in their exposure, just because we're actually teaching the limbic system. So why does it work? Well, again, it works because when you do virtual reality, it changes people's beliefs. They think that they can cope with the situation, they can face spiders, and they can actually increase what we call self-efficacy, the sense that you can cope. So by doing things in virtual reality, although they're real, the limbic system learns that it's not then dangerous, the belief changes, self-confidence changes, and their behavior changes. That's the story for anxiety disorders. Well, there's applications for other disorders. So this is an example for addictions. In addiction, the story is a bit different because you don't want to expose people to something that is frightening. You want to expose them to something that would trigger their craving so they could learn to control, not to behave and to fall to the craving. It means that if I have a patient who likes to have cocaine, well, everything I do in therapy is nice, but when her friend or his friend will offer him cocaine, this is where the real story will happen. So, and I can't offer cocaine to my patient to practice for tons of reasons that you obviously see. But in virtual reality, I can offer them the substance because it's virtual. So that's a study that was done with gambling and virtual reality gambling casino. And in blue is the patients, the induction of cravings in patients in the casino, and in green, it's inductions and cravings in their real life in non-gamblers, sorry. And you see that it works fine, it works as well. There's 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna speed up a little bit, but we also use VR for pain distraction. If you hurt yourself, the more you focus on the cut or the wound, the worse it is. It doesn't mean that it's not there when you don't focus on it, but it's worse if you focus on it, and it secretes different hormones. And we use VR to as a distraction. Same thing, people have been using VR in the treatment of obesity to challenge people perceptions of their own body. And there are studies that shows that it increases the effectiveness and efficacy of treatment for obesity. Now, in the most recent studies, we see different applications. There's less studies, but people are starting to look at virtual reality for schizophrenia, where you can recreate a virtual replica of the character that haunts you, and you can start talking with this character. The therapist is taking the microphone and talking back, so they can learn to talk back to their worst auditory hallucination and gain control over it. So that's really new in terms of studies. And the following question that I raised before is, why the heck does it work? Because it's virtual. Yes, it's virtual, but what you have here is a brain. Essentially, it's a brain, set of VR goggles, an old type, and this is the limbic system I mentioned. And because there's this 7 to 10 milliseconds window where the emotion kicks in before the logic comes out and makes sense or not of the situation, we have this window of opportunity where if we can trigger the amygdala, the limbic system, the brain works as if it's true. And that's what we call presence. If you've attended to other talks about virtual reality, there's a notion of presence where you forget that it's fake and you do just start behaving as if it's real. So the notion of presence is the illusion of being there in the virtual environment. And that's what makes the magic work, if I can say, is to essentially fool the brain. And why does it fool the brain? There's lots of theories, but I think the most interesting is that it's just a darn good illusion. If you look at visual illusion, we send signals to the brain and it's unclear and the brains see something. If you look outside and you see, I don't know, a tree in the way, you look at the clouds and you see a tree, well, there's no trees, these are clouds. But it's your brain making sense of something based on some vague information. So if you're wearing goggles, what you see matches your head movement, what you hear matches it, and that thing crawls to you because it's a virtual spider, there's sufficient information to fool the brain and to make people think it's true. Don't worry, Mish, I have 2 more slides because I'm mindful of time. So the take-home message is, well, VR is a well-documented tool to conduct exposure, facing fears, with people suffering from anxiety disorders, well-documented. Data is accumulating for other uses, including schizophrenia, for example, but that's not tomorrow, and I'm going to see that in hospitals, but it's coming. And there's many new applications being developed essentially every day. Another lesson to remember is that psychotherapists or professionals must understand the relevant treatment mechanism before using virtual reality, because virtual reality is not treating patients, it's providing a context. And that context could be used for professionals to essentially instill the emotions or behavioral change strategies. And presence is essentially just a good illusion that leads to that. So if you have more questions, we have a question and answer at the end, but here's my email address. You can write to me. This is my lab, because obviously I couldn't do it myself, just alone. It's a whole team thing. And there's 2 publications if you want to know more. This one is about anxiety disorders, and this one is in general about psychology and virtual reality. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stéphane. It's just amazing stuff. Just have questions about that, and I'll save those for the end. So if other people have questions, feel free to put questions in the chat, and if Stéphane has time, he can address them during the presentations, or we can save them for the discussion at the end. Thank you again. So we'll go on to our next meeting. Oh, sorry, presentation. See if I can get my screen working properly. I'm getting a bit too much flicker, so I'll just present the speakers without sharing. So our next presentation is on recreating the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law's photo hall in Minecraft from Thomas Burelli and Alexandre Lillo. So Thomas Burelli is a professor of law at the University of Ottawa Civil Law Section. His areas of expertise are environmental law, intellectual property, Indigenous people's rights, and ethics. He's the co-author of the website Learning in Progress. That's lip-aec.com. I'll put that in the chat. And on this website, he shares simulations and games he's developed with Alexandre Lillo to teach law. Alexandre Lillo is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Ottawa Public Law Center. His research focuses on water law, environmental governance, legal pedagogy, and game-based learning. He's currently the co-holder of a research chair in teaching innovation and a part-time professor with the University of Ottawa Faculty of Law and Faculty of Arts. So Thomas and Alex, it's over to you guys.
All right. Thank you so much, Mish. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for the invitation today. We're very thrilled and excited to share this project that is almost a year old now. So it's a good occasion to think back on it. I apologize in advance. I might get a bit laggy. Mish, if that's the case, please let me know, and I'd be happy to repeat myself, or hopefully the connection will be stable today. So as you will see, Thomas, sorry, I don't know if you put the presentation in full screen.
No, should be. You don't see it?
No, I see, like the interface at the moment.
It's because I have two screens. Let me check here. Better or not?
No, still the same.
This? No?
Still the same.
You need to put it in present mode.
Attends, I'll do this. Sorry. Okay, I'll just share my full screen then. Up, and then here you should see it.
We see the presenter mode.
Presenter mode.
I can try to share if hopefully I won't get too laggy, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, attends, Alex. I can just unplug this. If I do PowerPoint, if I do this, is it better?
We see the presenter mode at the
Still
moment.
presenter mode.
Yeah.
Pardon.
Do you want to give it a try, Thomas?
Again, here.
We still see the interface. I can give it a try. Oh, I think we're good.
We're good.
Awesome. All right, the first challenge overcome. That's good. All right, so as you will see, our presentation today is a bit less research oriented. It's more the presentation of what I would call a non-scientific experiment using Minecraft. Our goal today is mostly to present the different stage of the project, the learnings, the challenges, and to look back to this, non-scientific aspect to present future opportunity for research. But our first question to you all is, did you ever play Minecraft? So you can answer us using the chat. And if not, are you familiar with Minecraft? Is it just because you heard of it? I know a lot of people know Minecraft because, kids love it, but we are just curious to know how many of you are too much. Yeah. Both. Yeah, I feel like the future generation as being helping us a lot on this project, and we can touch on this later. So maybe we can give you a quick overview of the project. This is the, I would say, almost final version of the building. I see some empty offices. So
no, it's the final, Alex.
It's the final. Oops. So there are still some empty offices in there. Apologies. But to give you a quick overview of the work that took thousands of blocks. I think we're near 1 million blocks to build. At first we started one by one, but we still realized that there were tools, and Thomas will discuss that after. And it was, I think, about 400 hours of work cumulatively with a few different people. If you want to explore the faculty, we have a server that is open at the moment, and Thomas can share the info in the chat so you can log into the server. If we have time after, we can try to meet you on the server. Otherwise, feel free to explore the photo hall by yourself.
Alex, I will actually let you do it, because if I do it, I need to go off the presentation mode.
Okay.
So go on the YouTube of the
Oh yeah. Okay, I got it.
Okay. Okay, so why did we start this project? What are what did we see as issues, and why did we start this crazy project? Well, of course, it's as we know, we had to suffer the pandemic, and because our faculty was closed, the whole university was closed, and we could not go to the building anymore. Now we can go like a little if we want, but at that time in March 2020, we could not go to the faculty, so we were kind of like sad because we could not, because we love our faculty, and we were a bit bored at home. So we started to think like, okay, how can we do to still like keep a bound with the building? And as Alex will show you, we also saw other people doing the same with Minecraft, and so we're like, oh, why not try it? So it was one reason, because we were forced to leave our campus and we missed it, so we wanted to recreate it. But very fast we thought like, oh, it could be a nice opportunity for our new student to discover the future faculty, because we thought like all these first year law students, they won't probably be able to visit the faculty next year, and it's actually what happened. So we wanted to give them something to see at least, because we know that the first year is very important. And also like kind of a crazy dream, and maybe it's one dream we didn't actually achieve. It was to try to preserve a sense of community during the year. And we'll talk about this, but we had this kind of crazy dream that people would actually use it a lot and would take over the faculty. And it's maybe something that didn't actually work, so we'll talk about it. But mostly it's because we're feeling lonely, so we wanted to dive into this project. And as Alex said, it was a lot of hours and we had a lot of fun. So what tool did we use? We used Minecraft, which is a sandbox game. So basically, it's a game that lets you build anything. Alex will show you later, but you can build New York if you want. You can build anything. The other day for a cousin, I was looking for a Star Wars spaceship in Minecraft. I didn't find it actually, so maybe there is something to do here. But you can build anything you want, because the software is very flexible and it's a lot of possibilities. So we use Minecraft, and when we talk about using Minecraft, there is a first issue here. You can use a commercial version, but you also have a education version. The commercial version is you have to pay for it, of course, you have to get license. With the education one, it's free. So we tried both, but very, very fast, we discovered that the education one had a lot of limitations. So it's really good for a classroom, for some coding stuff in the classroom. But for what we wanted to do, we needed a commercial version. And it led us to a big issue, is that if you want to play our game, if you want to go to our faculty, you will need a commercial version. So it's one big obstacle for our student as well. But we can discuss it later. Second aspect to consider, we use a lot of plugins. You cannot do what we did with just the game, the simple game. You need to add plugins and modes. And for instance, to furnitures, to build the building faster, because as Alex said, first we were like block by block, and then we discovered that you can actually build a wall like in 1 click or 2 clicks, and then it went like faster and faster. You can of course add a gameplay element. If you visit the faculty, you will see that there is a lot of NPC, so non-player character in the faculty. It was added by a plugin, and these characters could actually talk to you. They could interact with you if we work more and do more coding. And basically, you can do a lot with Minecraft. You can build games into the game. So you can have a race game. You can have like, so if you are good with coding and if you have someone who knows how to do this, the possibilities are almost endless with this game, which is quite nice. And I encourage you to look online, like what people do on some servers. It's still a very dynamic community. It's impressive. Another issue is that to allow people to visit your faculty, you need to put it online. So first we tried the free versions of the servers, and it was interesting, but it's like very limited. So ultimately we had to pay. And just to give you the example here, Apex hosting, and to give you just an idea of the cost for 4 months, $67 US. So Alex will continue.
Thomas, I think your cat is excited about this presentation.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think there was kind of a trend, and the pandemic, and unfortunately helped this trend to grow. To our knowledge, the first to try reproducing or recreating the campus online in Minecraft were MIT and Queen's University. The major difference is that those were student-led initiatives. So it was community of students, they organized themselves, they used Discord. It was very, very structured, and they did a massive amount of work. It was actually quite inspiring. And if we have time, we can touch on that, but that's something we struggle a bit more to recreate at Ottawa U, this student-led initiative. And it's also a trend in a sense that we saw a lot of interest in wholesome and sandbox games over the past year and a half. And I'm thinking of Roblox that achieved, I think last August, its all-time highest number of active users in a month, which was like above 160 million. That's massive. Animal Crossing that was released last year and that was used for different projects. I think there was a school in Japan that actually did the graduation ceremony in Animal Crossing. So all kind of different things that are going on with that kind of games. So the early stages of this project, of course, we knew Minecraft. We had, to be honest, a very limited skills, so we had to learn a lot, which was quite easy and quite fascinating at the same time. First of all, Minecraft is very user-friendly, so you get to discover things quite easily, and there is a massive community online. So it's extremely easy to find tutorials, to build all kind of things. I remember at the beginning, I was very focused on trying to build a working elevator for the faculty. It worked for a few days, and then something happened, and it's under construction since then. But it worked. That was satisfying. And there is some kind of therapeutic aspect to Minecraft as well. Building blocks there is this very nice, relaxing music. I encourage you to go listening to it on YouTube. It's very nice to, even if you write or work, to have this background music. It's very soft, very nice. So it feels good. It's not stressful. It's a very, maybe it's to some extent, awesome sandbox game. As Thomas said, endless possibilities to, in Minecraft, you can create all kinds of things. For instance, on the slide here, you see Manhattan that was recreated in Minecraft. Another project that was, I think it's a PhD candidate that did use Minecraft to explain some things about the brain. I don't want to butcher anything, so I just encourage you to go have a look. But it's amazing. It's like the outcome is for someone that doesn't know anything about it, it's very appealing. And the only thing we needed at the beginning was just time, and many granite blocks as well.
Yeah. So to give you more details on how we did it and how did we proceed, we wanted to make it as real as possible and as close to reality as possible. So the first step was to ask for the map of the building, and it was like again, it's something we were very curious to know if we could access the maps and how to use it to do the faculty in the game. I don't think that the people at Queen and the MIT, I'm not sure it's an exact reproduction of the campus, but for us, our challenge was to make it as real as possible. So we wanted each room to be there, even rooms we never saw. And when I look at it, I'm thinking like maybe we should have been more flexible on this, but at least we did it. So, you know, we had to calculate like how many meters is this wall, how many blocks is it in the game, so you have to adapt. So it's kind of fun because we are law professor, so it's not our job at all, but at the same time it's so funny, and you can still sell it as a law related research project. So it was kind of fun. So we had all these maps and we tried to just reproduce it as well as we could. And so here to give you some example of the results, and again, some elements of methodology. So of course, we took a lot of pictures, and we sneaked into the building to get some pictures about the furniture, about how it's, because we have our memories, but working just with your memories, it's kind of hard. So we needed to do this. We use Google Maps as well, because then most of the time you can go around the building and you can see things you never saw. We discovered weird stuff about the roof of the faculty. I still don't know what it is, but it's there. And all the stuff about the visual aspects, of course, the furniture, the classroom, the library, some details you forget. So we get to know our faculty even better. So it was a nice journey for this. So we discovered details we never noticed, like ghost rooms. And now we know, because now we know the ghost room is there. I went to check some of it, and now I know what it is. So it's kind of funny to discover this. And we still wonder about the content of some rooms and space in the faculty, which is fun because it could be used in future games around the faculty. And I'll give you some details about this at the end. The roof, I mean, we don't know what's going on the roof. So we can have like a lot of, we can imagine a lot of stuff about what's going on there. And here you have like several pictures showing you like the different stage of the program. Stage one, it was just like drawing the foundation of the faculty. And this was already weeks of work, you know, and weeks because we worked only like 2 to 3 hours per day because we had to do our job first. And we worked with Mish at some point for the stage two. I think Mish came on the server to work on the stage two. So laying the foundation, then we did like one level by level. So on the second picture, you can see in the back the elevator Alex is talking about. And the stage three, it's like once you have everything outside of the faculty, then you need to do all the interior design. And it's a whole other type of work. We were able to do all the outside work. To do the interior design, seriously, it's like we needed someone else. And we'll talk about this person. Because it's another task and you need to learn different skills to do this.
About 5 minutes, guys.
Okay, so let's make it quick. So at the beginning, we were, chilling in Minecraft, as you see on this picture at the bottom of the slide, but it quickly became for real for fun to for real. And it's because we had institutional interest, which is amazing. The faculty administration was interested in using this reproduction of the faculty as a promotional tool. So the idea was to use it for the virtual ceremony, for the back to faculty ceremony. Either for students to like that know the faculty that want to explore, or as Thomas said, for new students. So there was a lot of brainstorming as per the format, but what we chose in the end was to do a streaming, and the streaming was organized with, key people from the faculty, the deans, some professors, and the idea was to ask them questions, anecdotes about the faculty, so we could explore the main rooms and the main areas of the faculty. So there was a bit of crisis management, but we were very fortunate to have like extremely valuable help from some people, as Thomas said. So we worked with 2 students that were absolutely amazing. The first one is Rami Alaoui, which that's convenient, is a Minecraft YouTuber. I think he has close to 100,000 followers, subscribers. So it's, you know, it's quite a big channel. And he spent many hours creating the visual aspects and all the details in the faculty. He streamed like probably close to 20 hours on his YouTube channel and doing all this stuff. So that was quite a nice experience to see, to share. Second student was Simon Garceau, which was just, you know, like a LLB student, and he has a technical background and he took care of all the things that we did not understand anything about, including the server, all the plugins, making sure that everything was working properly, no bugs, and he did an absolutely amazing job here as well. We worked with a few colleagues, Etienne Trépanier, that was managing the streaming, Thérèse Corning, that was the co-host. As Thomas said, Mish was quite helpful as well. Send us some recommendation. Because of you, Mish, we found out about this plugin that helped us build the faculty so much faster. That was great. And in the end, the event was quite a success. I think we would have been happy with about 50 viewers. We end up reaching up to 250 viewers live during the streaming, and the video now has about 2,000 views. So it was overall a pretty success, we like to call it.
Yeah, and we have around 250 new students every year, but during the streaming we had new students and current students. So it's quite a good statistic. We are happy with this. So what next once we have done this? So the faculty is still online. We were asked to use it for alumni events, you know, like for our old students, and then to see how is the faculty. They were very curious about it. We used it for open door events, like recently, some months ago, for potential new students. So they were quite excited about it. And as Alex said, one of the things we would like to do is to give this to the students and let them play with it. But for this, we need students who like Minecraft, who know how it works, and who start to organize a server and work around it. We didn't succeed with it, but we don't lose hope for the future on this. And hopefully it will happen, but it would be nice. So they would take over, because we cannot just like build the community and keep it alive. So it's something that would be nice. And going beyond this experience, what we could do, and that we didn't do because we didn't have time, but as I told you, we could add modes and we could have more activities or games inside the faculty. We could imagine some role play games inside. We could imagine the student playing in the faculty some roles. We could put Easter eggs in it. We could put more funny stuff. Of course, we could also develop the campus. We could keep going developing the campus. We only develop our faculty because it's our building. We love it. We use it a lot. Honestly, I don't have much interest to do, let's say, the administration building. It's a beautiful building, but I don't know it as well. So it would be like a phenomenal task. And yeah, unfortunately, we have other priorities as well. But what this game taught us is what you could do with this kind of with this type of game, the sandbox games Alex described you, the kind of adventure you can build, and it's relatively easy, not impossible. And another example we're working on right now with Alex is RPG Maker, which allow you to build old school RPG. So kind of 2D, 3D RPG, and you can create environment, you can create characters, you can create quests. So our task is to recreate again the faculty in the game, and it's much more easier in RPG Maker because it has to be a simplified version. It won't be every rooms. And then you can create quests inside the faculty. And here again, the stories are endless. It could be to show the services of the faculty, could be to introduce the professors, could be to teach some aspect of the law. We could imagine a jail in the basement of the faculty and explain some things about criminal law and some theories about this. So it's very exciting. We kind of open a box, and it's nice to see what we can do with these tools, which are evolving all the time. Alex mentioned Roblox, and it's another kind of tool. I tried it, I didn't like it so far, but it's something that might be useful in the future. And with this, I think we are done, Alex.
Thank you. Awesome. Every time I hear about that project, it just amazes me that you guys managed to get that building built. That's such amazing work. But thank you for talking to us about this. Oh, and we see a demonstration of it.
Thank you, Mish.
If you have question, I lost my. As you see, we have automatic doors. So I don't know if anybody has question. Alex, I'll let you do because I cannot do two things at the same time.
Maybe we can wait for the questions at the end, so we can hear the last presentation.
Yeah, we could take again, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, please, as you've been doing, or we can save questions to the end, and maybe we can see more of it. But thank you. All right, so we have one more presentation for today. It's a presentation on VR in the University of Ottawa's Richard Labbé Makerspace and Maker Lab. So we have presentation from Hanan Anis, who is the professor in electrical and computer engineering at the University of Ottawa. She holds an NSERC chair in entrepreneurial engineering design and is also the coordinator of entrepreneurship and innovation in the Faculty of Engineering. Her passion is helping students graduate with an entrepreneurial mindset that enables them to play leading roles in existing organizations or to create their own jobs. We also have Justine Boudreau, who has graduated from uOttawa with a BASc in mechanical engineering, as well as an MASc in electronic business technologies in 2021. She manages the Richard Labbé Makerspace and the Maker Lab, rapid prototyping facilities in the Center for Entrepreneurship and Engineering Design at the University of Ottawa. She loves to design and build, as well as to teach and help others. So Hanan and Justine, I pass it over to you.
Thanks, Mish. I'll get started and we'll tag team Justine and I. So just bear with me until I find the right. Just 1 second. Can you see my slides?
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So I'm going to start off by introducing to you what is the Center of Entrepreneurship and Engineering Design, what are the courses that we do there, and then and specifically we're going to be speaking about VR within the context of our center, and Justine would do that second part. So just the Center for Entrepreneurship and Engineering Design as a background is, like the name suggests, it helps students do engineering design and entrepreneurship. So we want to expose them to building things because this is part of the Faculty of Engineering, as well as graduate with an entrepreneurial mindset. So in everything we do, those are the two things we focus on. As a result, rapid prototyping facility is an integral part of what we do. We have courses, whether it is in engineering design or entrepreneurship. We also hold a number of competitions every year that are open to our students and students in the university at large, and sometimes in the community. We hold a lot of extracurricular programs, and we really focus a lot on professional development for students. In terms of the prototyping facilities, they are located in the ground floor of a relatively new building that is called the STEM building, and we have actually 7 different facilities. And just to explain what are we talking about here, we have digital technologies like 3D printing, like VR, like laser cutting, and we give workshops in our Maker Lab. But once students are able to use the equipment, they can actually go to the makerspace and use it for free at all the time they want. We have equivalent facilities for machine shop, We have the Manufacturing Training Center for training. And again, when students are able, or actually faculty for that matter, when they are able to use the facilities and the equipment, they can go and use the Bronzefield Center. We also have 2 different team spaces. One team space for large teams, usually for running cars competitions, rocket competition, that kind of big competitions. And then we have what is called the sandbox for smaller teams and smaller competitions. So this is just pictures of our makerspace that hold, as I said, a lot of 3D printers, a lot of 3D scanners, VR equipment. And we're not only open to our community, but to the community at large on Sundays. And of course, this is pre-pandemic. Here are some pictures of our Bronzefield Center, very similar, but of course, you know, equipment in the machine shop can hurt people much easier. So it's not open to the community for sure. This is some pictures of our John McIntyre team space. And this is, you know, it actually for student teams that are quite large, that you know, sometimes 20, 30, 40 students, and they go to international competitions on a yearly basis. So just to tell you a little bit about the courses, because this is where we work on VR quite a bit. We have stream of courses on the undergraduate level and stream of courses on the graduate level. On the undergraduate level, we start in first year, which is engineering design. They're all client-based courses. It's more scaffolded in the first year. Second year, it's more, you know, one team with one client, so to speak. By the fourth year, we want the student to start their own company. So we're moving from a very controlled environment in the first year to letting them loose in the fourth year, if that makes sense. On the graduate level, we follow a similar one, but meaning that there is also one course of engineering design and one course in introduction to technology entrepreneurship. So this is some of the example of the projects that we have. This is a first year example, students who are building a zero carbon footprint shed. So it's actually modular sheds that we actually ended up, or I should say, Justine ended up by taking them to indigenous communities up north at the end, but they had solar panels, they had full automation with water and electricity that is generated from the solar panels. So it was a great project, and you can imagine it's a big group of students working on this for a first year project. Second year project, this is an example of what we call foot operated TV remote. This is George, one of our clients, and he actually had difficulties with his hands, but his feet operates very well, and he wanted a remote control. And this is where second year students developed the remote control and actually put it on the right-hand side. You can see that remote control with big buttons that George can actually operate with his feet. This is another example where actually in one of the courses, students work to develop this with the Faculty of Arts, an interactive art installation. And actually the idea is that as people going up and down the stairs, the lights change in this artistic installation. So just, I wanted to put the background of that these courses are client-based, and depending on the clients, we actually worked on the big project. And in the next, I'll give it over to Justine, and she's going to give you some examples of specifically the VR projects that we have done in the past. Over to you, Justine.
Perfect, thanks. So like Hanan was saying, we have lots of different projects. We have about 10 different projects that we do in a year in our first year class. And in our second year, we have much more than that. But typically our VR AR related project would happen in our first year class with those students. And essentially this all started in about January of 2019, and we've had a virtual reality or augmented reality focused project in each semester since then. Our first few projects revolved around kind of the medical field. And then after that, we did a few more projects. One that was more focused on chemistry, one in construction, one waste management. So I'll go into a little bit more detail on a few of these. So Hanan, you can switch the slides. So our very first virtual reality project, our client was the Ottawa Hospital. And essentially we have what we call our Makerspace Challenge every year. And in 2019, our Makerspace Challenge was VR in the medical field. So essentially what the students were tasked with doing was coming up with a more relaxing, more peaceful experience for patients who are undergoing chemo or radiation therapy. And so the students had to come up with different things related to that. They always talk to their clients as they go through this process of designing and making their games and simulations. So for example, one thing that they learned going through this specific project is that when people are going through chemo, for example, and if they would be having a VR headset, for example, they would feel nauseous if they have to like move their head a lot and look at different things in that environment. So they had to come up with something that was more peaceful, something that would take the mind off of actually doing chemotherapy for these patients. So the pictures that you see on the slide here are from the winning team of what we call Design Day at the end of the semester, where we have all of our students or all of the student groups present their final designs. And this group, what they were able to do is they actually had like an auto-generated environment so that the landscape would change a little bit every time you would like get into the game. So it's not exactly the same each time. And you'd be able to pick between night and day and a few different environments as well. And so one of the students actually who was in this winning team, he went on to work for the Ottawa Hospital for the summer, and he was able to continue the development of this project and continue working with them to continue development of it. And this student, again, he was able to, after that, come back and work for us. We have what we call project managers in our courses. And there are more senior year students who help our first year students and our second year students going through the courses when they have more experience. So they're able to help the younger students. And so this student has more experience in VR. And so he was able to help out the other newer students in our VR projects as well. So we kind of have the chain of students helping each other through that as well. So Hanan, you can switch. So this is another example of a project. They can play that. So this one is, it was for a chemistry professor who is very passionate about teaching. And she wanted a new way of expressing kind of how chemistry works, because people have a hard time kind of visualizing how different reactions or what molecules look like and that sort of thing, because it's so small and people have that hard time kind of understanding how all of this works. And so what she tasks our students doing is coming up with a virtual environment where people would be able to see these different reactions happening in different environments and kind of be able to see it at a macroscopic level. So this is the team which won our design day. And what they had done is they implemented an environment on Earth with normal physics, and they also had an environment on the moon where it was a little bit different. And so they were able to show in large what those reactions were looking like, and so that students or the viewers or the participants in the virtual reality game would be able to see what that looked like. And just have a better representation of what's happening. So Hanan, you can go next. So this was, again, another project that we did with the company LS Dawn. And this project was to implement the ability to overlay plans on an actual building. So if you're imagining a building that's in construction, something that's not completely done, and maybe you have the foundation and walls or stuff like that that's built on a construction site, but other things are not there yet. The architects and the engineers have all of these building plans already. So essentially what the students did is that they were able to take these building plans, put it into an augmented reality phone app. And so they were able to have it so that you take your phone, you could walk around a construction site with this plan, with this building, and then you could kind of toggle on and off these different plans or the different views. Hanan, if you want to play the video. So essentially they could see in this version of the app or this group, what they implemented was a spot to put notes, for example. So if something is not where it's supposed to be. And then like I was saying, there are different views. So there's electrical, mechanical, structural, and architectural. So they could kind of toggle on and off the different views and the things that you could see. So what they're showing right now is actually a building that is built. It's the STEM building that Hanan was talking about. This is our building where all of our facilities are. So it's an already built building, but in theory, this would be applicable to kind of any other building as well. And you could go next slide. And so, of course, because of the pandemic, we were also doing everything online. And essentially what this forced us to do is that all of our labs that we would usually do in STEM in our facilities, like the machine shop, we had to now do online. So what we ended up doing for our smaller pieces of equipment, like Arduinos, for example, where we teach programming, we were able to send those to students at home. But with machine shop, you can't send a milling machine or a lathe to people at home. So what we ended up doing was recreating this environment virtually and kind of sending this game or simulation off to the students so that they were still able to get some of that experience at home. So I'll just show the demo. Can you guys see that okay?
Looks good.
Okay. So I kind of skipped through the beginning of this, but essentially there's a section at the beginning where the students are able to, it's like a hide and seek, I guess, where you have to find all of the different parts of the machine. So you have to click on all the different parts. And when you find the part, it highlights it and you've kind of identified it. And then it gives you information on what that part of the machine does. So for example, like this lever right here, it's a lock for the Z-axis of the machine. So it'll tell you that and it gives you that information. And there's some videos as you go through this, this simulation as well. But essentially where I'm at in the simulation right now is that I have to drill into this black workpiece that's on my vise. So it's giving me instructions in this box here. And there's a few hints if I'm not sure exactly what I'm supposed to do. So right now, anyway, I can tighten this. I'm going to change my view. And then I have more information in this box as well. And I'll just kind of skip through this. Go faster. Go back here. So essentially it's like a guided interaction with the machine. And what I'm able to do is to click on the different parts, interact with them. And this is kind of the preliminary stage in the simulation. Later on in the simulation, there's kind of more free access where the users can kind of click where they want and interact with the parts so that they can, they can learn how it works. So here, let's say I'm drilling. And I'll turn the machine off. And then that's drilling. And then essentially the students would be able to go through the other operations on the mill. They could do face milling and side milling as well. So we have this type of simulation that we made for the mill. We have one for the lathe in the machine shop. We also have a training called basic training, which is just essentially like our preliminary safety and hand tool training. This one was made with an AR version of the game as well. So the students, we sent them kind of plans, like a PDF of a plan of a cardboard headset that they could print off at home. And they would kind of cut out pieces of the cardboard, make themselves a headset, and then they'd be able to like spawn the drill press in their room kind of thing, and then interact with that to be able to do the lab, which they would normally be doing in person. So this is it for me. If anybody has any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
All right. Well, thank you, Hanan and Justine. And this brings us to the end of our 3 presentations. So before we take questions, how about just one more thanks for our presenters, Stéphane Bouchard, Thomas Burelli, Alexandre Lillo, Hanan Anis, and Justine Boudreau. Thank you, all of you, very, very much. Also, just want to thank the members of the EMCoP who helped organize this session, Daniel Lindenberger, Saeed Dianatkar, Rutendo Masuka, and Sania Joshi. Thank you very much to all of you for helping. We still have 15 minutes, so if your question has not yet been addressed in the chat, feel free to re-raise that question, or if you have questions that you've been holding to the end, now's the time to satisfy your curiosity. One thing I was interested in is if there would be a way to get that axolotl AR for Minecraft to facilitate the building of future faculty buildings. But thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Just while we're waiting, I think the question, I think I saw earlier in the chat, Stéphane, some questions about this, but one of the things that I was interested in was the level, the threshold of fidelity for these simulations. Is there a stage at which like the simulation wasn't high enough fidelity that it was ineffective, or what was your experience with that?
Well, it's a nuanced answer. If you look at the entertainment industry, Disney, La Ronde, or Six Flags, whatever, you want realism because people will be criticizing and they don't have any specific emotional issues with whatever it is. So that's a different ballgame. When we look at simulation, for example, learning to move a crane in VR, it's a behavioral sequence that you need to learn. Realism is totally irrelevant. But when you, and I'm going to get to the emotions in a minute, but when you learn to move a crane, sometimes you have to avoid people's dogs that get in the way. So you don't want the realism of the color and the movement of the crane. You just need the realism of the task you need to manage, and then the cognitive distractors around. When you get to emotions, well, fear of spiders, people change. Well, people that are afraid of spiders, if they see a spider on TV, even if it's on black and white, they're going to change and switch channel. And it's very far from them, and it's huge, and it's a movie-like thing, and still it triggers the emotion. And my 7 milliseconds window of opportunity there. So even if this spider is not very realistic, if it's running after you, it'll do the work. So the first VR environments we developed here in Gatineau, like any grant, you don't have the grant you're requesting. So we had to cut on the budget. And so we modified a 3D video game. And the only thing we could afford is a graphic artist and not a behavioral programmer. So we put a spider on 3 behaviors. We have a cockroach, which walks sideways. We had a dog that follows you all the time. And we had the crab walk sideways, and the cockroaches walk like cockroaches. And non-phobic would pick it up immediately and laugh at it. phobic would scream, start crying, because it's a limbic, it's an emotional reaction. It's way too rapid. So the realism is not that important. There's a study done in Germany where they had fear flying and they had the motorized platform and not the platform. Most people prefer the platform because it's cooler. But in terms of treatment outcome, effectiveness, no change. I have a six-wall cave. So it's a $6 million room that you get images projected, and it works as well as an Oculus, which is $600. So for emotions, you need to get the right cues. I was sitting in the chat. I don't know if it's one person or the whole group. There was a nice study on social anxiety done in Switzerland when you would have to go to give a talk in an auditorium, and there were only eyes, just pairs of eyes. So in terms of graphic, it's amazing. It's really poor. They're just eyes, no face, no chin, no bodies. But the social phobic were picked up, we're getting anxious because we get the social judgment of others through the eye and the look of others and not their knees and hands. So even though the virtual environment is not good, those who have specific triggers to that their cues are reacting. So it's a balance, but if I were to sell you a virtual environment that is ugly, but it works, you'd probably buy the good one, even though it's not effective. So we have to keep up with realism so it makes sense, so people are willing to use it in psychotherapy. But the brain is an amazing machine, but when it gets to emotion, it's pretty stupid. It's easy to fool.
Right.
And that's our window for us. And pain, the same thing. I was chatting and I assumed that schizophrenia is the same thing. It's a non-linear relationship. Zero realism means zero presence. Some realism, and then it kicks in. And then we do study in the lab where we use smell and we have touch, and it's a lot of effort, and it brings that much increase in credibility and in presence and in intensity. So we don't need perfect realism. There's a cutoff, and it's unclear why. Where? Okay.
That's helpful. Thank you. I see this might be a follow-up for you. I see Craig has dropped in the chat. It says, if the efficacy of VR for aversion therapy is looking so good, what are the major barriers to adoption? Is it a hardware sourcing issue, or are there large costs for the apps to be built?
There was three barriers that are changing. And there's one that is not. Cost of hardware, cost of software, and complexity of using tech. In the past, head mount would cost, the NVIS that I had in the lab cost about $20,000. Now you got twice the quality with an Oculus for $600. So hardware is getting away of a problem. That's not a major issue anymore. Although psychologists and mental health institutions don't have a lot of money, some people still don't have computers to type their notes, even today. So software, that's another issue with cost, but that is changing now. We see different companies, researchers pulling resources together to try not to sell really expensive material, but actually disseminate. So that's getting progressively behind. Technology and psychologists or mental health professional. We go in psychology because we don't like computers. It's an overstatement, but essentially we want to be with people and talk with people. So I think technology in a way is not part of the genes of or the fiber of psychologists. So we have to work on that, but that's getting better, especially with the younger generation who are born with computers. And there's the fact that when we do psychotherapy, the key ingredient is exposure. And still today, most psychologists don't do exposure because they don't like it, because it makes our patient uncomfortable. And that's the main effect. I mean, to me, that's the main barrier to adoption. Is lots of psychologists sadly do not apply evidence-based treatment for tons of reasons. And I think VR, by being more effective, should probably help to get this dissemination.
Gotcha.
And,
thank you.
Yeah,
oh, sorry.
I can answer the other ones, but I don't want to be the only one talking.
I was just going to quickly mention before you do take up the one from Bernard, Alex, Drew reminded me that Minecraft is also available in VR. In the tinkering lab we have at the University of Ottawa, we have a couple of Oculus Rift helmets, and we do have Minecraft in VR. It'd be an interesting opportunity to get people to explore photo with the Minecraft VR to see how that experience changes things.
And Mish, I would even say from what Professor Bouchard just said about realism and stuff, I guess that because you have spiders in Minecraft, you have a lot of models that you can ready to use. So it could also, I see your link.
Definitely.
So I'll read the comment that was posted for you. It says, for exposure therapy, PTSD, how important is it that the VR scenario closely matches the original trauma triggering event for each client?
For trauma or for the other mental health application, it needs to match as close enough. So for example, we have a virtual environment where for victims of rape. So there's a rapist in the bar, and it's obvious that this guy doesn't look like a nice person. Well, it doesn't have to be the rapist that raped the person if you want to do exposure for flashbacks of PTSD. So the skin color doesn't matter. The body size doesn't matter much. But if you haven't been raped, it won't work. If it's a car accident, so you need to get close enough so we get this susceptible or the patient's sensitivities or susceptibilities. From poor translation from French, but you get the right triggers, and that's close enough. But there's a close enough that is not well defined. But for now, there's virtual Iraq and Afghanistan. From Portugal, there's something for peacekeeping missions, and we have a rape accident and car accident, and that's what we have in the world, and a bus terrorist accident from Israel. So that's what we have. So if someone has been in a car accident and he's working in an ambulance, might not work because it's too far. So it'll get close to it at some point.
Thank you. For Hanan and Justine, I know that technologies are changing quickly. Are there plans for new technologies in the makerspace or the maker lab for the upcoming year or two? Have you worked much with AR and HoloLens, for example, or is there something new that you're thinking of?
I'll answer sort of broadly speaking, and let Justine add. I mean, we're constantly looking for new technologies. Actually, we started off the VR, just generally speaking, interest in VR equipment in our makerspace in 2017 or so. And it's funny how this experience became very handy when all our facilities had to close for COVID.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an experience. I don't know what we could have done without that experience in the past year and a half to run our very hands-on labs. So we're certainly, happy that we went that route. In terms of, we're hoping that we'll return back to in person as of September. Our labs are going to be running in person. However, all the effort that we have put in there, and I would say Justine and her team have put in there, would actually help train people before they come for the labs. So if you could imagine, all this effort in VR is not wasted, but in fact, you get to a certain level, maybe 70% there with the VR, and then be much more efficient in terms of, so we're actually, all our equipment and all our facilities are done in virtual environments for training purposes. So that's what we have been working quite hard on. And of course, AR for interaction. Justine, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I guess that was really well said. I don't really have much to add, except we're really excited to get people again back on campus, and we're at the same time getting more staff, because if we don't have students, then we don't have staff really as well. So if we get more people kind of helping us go look for those other technologies and other possibilities of things we can do, then that's very helpful as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, John's been very patient waiting. I know he has a question, and we're down to our last few minutes, so maybe we'll get John to ask his question.
I'll try and be quick. Professor Bouchard, one of my areas is communications law, and that includes the regulating of advertising. And I just wonder, from your experience with how VR can be used to break down, barriers or impediments to action. One of the things we don't yet know, or at least I don't believe we know yet, is how effective virtual reality advertising and persuasion might be, and how concerning that should be. So I just wonder if you have any general comments to steer me in the right direction. And I'll just add that my main research area is freedom of thought under the Charter of Rights, which people don't think about a lot. They think about freedom of speech, but freedom of thought is very much in the Charter, just not expanded upon.
Complex question. I'll try to be brief as well. The legal implications are just becoming to be explored. And there's no regulation for software. For example, you can buy a pill. There's nothing equivalent from Health Canada for software. So any bozo could sell anything at any price, and people could use it and actually get worse and start quoting for both. And then advertisement, we know that there's been, because VR has been used, it's hot now, but I started doing research in VR in 1999, so it's not new. And back then, people were trying what does it change is if you visit Egypt in VR? Are you really learning more? And the answer is often no. It's cooler. Well, so the aim of the teacher or the publicity company needs to be more than just the experience if you want to have an impact. So definitely. In terms of empathy, there's this notion of presence. If everyone is familiar with it, but just keep it briefly, but there are studies where you put the goggles and what you see is what is filmed from someone else's eyes or camera. So when I move around, it moves the other head. So you can have the impression that you're in someone else's body. Because if I move and if I touches you, it creates the illusion. So now people are trying to sensitize what is it to being victim, for example, of racism or sexual assault. And there's a few studies where males are sexually assaulted as a virtual character. And that seems to have a pretty profound impact. The ethics of that, it's a long story. But there's a group in Stanford they're essentially replicating all the study we did in social psychology decades ago in VR. And they see that it all translates. If you're racist, the racism will show in the VR. You're going to behave differently with the virtual characters. So if we can change that, can we change it in physical reality? But there's lots of unknown. And the guy is called Jonathan Bayinson from Stanford. Is very prolific in that field.
Well, thank you for the clues. Obviously, I'm not concerned about what I would consider to be positive impacts. I'm worried about the negative impacts, and whether there are any demonstrable ones that we've seen so far. And it sounds like maybe we haven't.
If I can, we haven't. There's a there's cyber sickness, the side effects. That's known, but that's the study. But lots of people are afraid that if we treat patients of fear of height with VR, they won't be afraid of heights. Well, they still have their brain, so they don't jump out of cliffs because they're not afraid anymore. So we don't go that far. But I'm a psychologist. We technically treat, I'm a mental health psychologist. We treat people. We don't push people like they would do in advertisement.
Well, very helpful and actually a bit comforting. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, I'm very sorry to jump in. We are a couple minutes past the official end time. I just want to thank all of the presenters once more and the EMCoP again. This is officially the end of the session. If anybody wants to remain for another couple of minutes for any last comments, or if anybody has time for any last comments, you're welcome to stay. But thank you all for joining us today. Again, August session, when the information is available for when that takes place, that'll be available on the EMCoP website. And thank you once more to our presenters.